Okay, so very first, of course, before I can install this, I have to take this old one out. So to do that, let's get this magazine out and let's get this partially field stripped. We just have to take out the bolt carrier and stuff like that. Okay, now what I'm going to want to do is drop the hammer, because when I lift this safety out to take it out, this will spring forward, and we don't want that to happen. There we go. Ideally, let it go forward a bit softer than I did, but still, just as long as it doesn't hit hard against this pin up here at the front that you can't really see there, but just right there. Don't let that hit too hard, and then you'll be all good. So, now that we've got that, let's take the old one out. So to do that, we'll just lift this up to where it's pointing upwards, and it'll just slide right out here. As you can see, I've already got it out on one side, and then there we go. Just like that. Now, one thing you'll notice is it's a little bit hard to see, but I have a Tapco retaining plate in here. In your case, you might have one of those kind of paper clip, as they're called, wire shepherd's hooks that holds all the trigger components together. If you do, I will have uploaded, just a few minutes before this video came up, I will have uploaded a video on how to change to one of these. In my case, this particular rifle came installed with it, so I don't have to worry about it. But if you are curious on how to install it, like for example on the older Wassers, I'm not sure if they've changed it now, but they used to at least use the shepherd's hook. So, but if you have one of these, it's nice and easy. When you take out the safety, nothing wants to fall or move out of the way. So now, before I actually get around to putting the new Armacon in, let's do a bit of a weight comparison now that we have these both out. So let's get started by just weighing the standard AK safety selector. And it's weighing in at 32 grams. Let me just flip it a bit just to double check. 30 grams that time. Well, we'll say it's 30 grams, and let's see how much the Armacon weighs now. Should weigh a bit more. Of course, this has a bit more material to it, so, but not much. 34. The amount that it's weighing, that's actually surprisingly, that is less than I thought it would weigh. That is impressive. So it's almost identical in weight, and you could almost say that it's within the margin of error, because as you saw when I just barely bumped my table here, it changed to 32 grams. So, it'd be weird for them to weigh the exact same. I suppose it is possible if they lightened this up, but very interesting. Looks like it is just a slight bit more though. Now that we've got that, let me actually put this on the gun. So assuming you don't have a shepherd's hook that kind of falls and gets in the way, installation of a new safety selector is really simple. We've just got to put this back in the exact same way. So up like that, and then it has to go through this hole there. You can kind of see the light through it. And if you hear that, it just popped in. Now we can push this down a bit. Let me just make sure that's in all the way. And I should just have to pull the trigger and push this down. Okay, so if you saw there, that actually wasn't fitting. I haven't tried anything yet. I'm probably going to have to try filing it, which I don't really like doing, but it seems like it'll almost fit. It's just barely not fitting. One thing I did notice is I actually ordered two of these, one for my Wasser, and it actually did fit just right in. It was just a drop-in replacement on the Wasser, but I took it back out here to show it. I'm noticing these actually are slightly different. If you look at the one I was trying to install on the SLR here, it has a hole in it, and this one doesn't, but otherwise they are the exact same shape. I was thinking maybe they'd be a slightly different shape, and especially when I saw that, I thought that might be the case, but no. It seems like they probably just do that to probably lighten it up a bit more, but anyway, I will try doing a bit of filing or dremeling. Hopefully I won't take off too much, and we'll get back here and hopefully it'll go in then. Alright, so I'm going to get started dremeling here in just a sec. I'm just going to take a little bit off of there, and we'll just take a little bit off at a time. It doesn't look like very much has to come off, so hopefully this will be done without too much difficulty. Yeah, it seems like it's still a little bit too tight of a fit. It seems like I could force it down, but I don't want to do that. So we'll take off a slight bit more. So I think you all got the idea of what I was doing, so I cut out the rest of it. I did that probably about 8 times, just taking a little bit off on the bottom here and then testing it again, etc. And I finally got it to fit. As you can see, I've kind of put stuff away already. But now one thing I did notice that I wanted to do also is this is an extremely tight fit. So I'm going to bend it out right now before I actually put it in the gun. It may be easier in the gun, so I'll do final adjustment then, but I wanted to do kind of the large, like, gross adjustments here. If you are having trouble with fitting it, is just take out your old safety and kind of compare the profile of it. It's a little bit hard because you can't push them right on top of each other, but you can kind of see. I do think it's interesting that this one, it doesn't have this big kind of monolithic, whatever you'd call this part, compared to the original. You can see this actually just goes to the side of the trigger, whereas this one kind of goes, I don't know what you call it, but it ends up sitting under it in both cases, but this one kind of totally avoids that and just sits to the side. But yeah, just kind of following the same height of that part there is a good idea. And I did that, and it all fits well. This is probably still a little bit tighter, but it fits perfectly, so it's not an issue. There's one thing I noticed that I almost messed up on my wasser that I will point out when we get back in regarding one of the springs that you should be careful about. One more thing I did want to mention now that we're back in, before I actually do get these put back in. Apologies for doing this out of order, but I'm going to go back to weighing it, because one thing I noticed is I didn't actually weigh both of these. And if you notice, these do have the different design. So this is the same one as last time, so it's cool that I get a slightly different reading every single time, but more or less the same. I guess my scale, well, no surprise, it's slightly off. But what I do think is interesting is this is 10 grams more. The one that does not have the hole in the back is an entire 10 grams more than the one that does. And now it's saying it's 30, but then in that case, yeah, this should be 40. So that is pretty crazy that it weighs that much more. Armacon did a very good job of making this safety right here almost the exact same weight as the regular safety. And as I was mentioning earlier, the difference in weight here can almost be attributed to an error in just measuring it, whereas this one is actually noticeably a little bit heavier, which I was thinking it should be, because, you know, it has a bit more material here. But I suppose you could probably take out, I'm surprised that it's 10 grams more. That's not a whole lot, but I suppose you could drill a hole here yourself. I don't know what size this hole is, but I don't think it matters too much. Or maybe that wouldn't work. If you can see here, this one has a bit of a curve to it, whereas this one just goes flat, and then it does have the hole drilled in it. So I don't know. At any rate, this one does weigh a fair bit more, which is very interesting. But now that I've shown that, I will actually get these put in. And I already did a bit of bending on this, so we'll see if it's too tight or if I need to adjust it any further. Okay, so like I was mentioning earlier, this just goes in, just pops right back in, except this time, hopefully it'll actually go all the way in, and I don't have to fit it any further. So that is sitting where it is. Also, I do have the stock folded just so this shows up better in frame. It doesn't interfere with the safety going in at all. So it looks like we're good. I'm going to pull the trigger now to get that right there moved out of the way, and this should just go straight down if I have everything lined up. Perfect. Now, here's what I wanted to mention. Actually, I don't need to show it on the wasser. Okay, so I actually took the safety back out just to show this. There's no fitment issues this time. But if you look at the spring right here, or actually both of them, these are kind of loose. You could probably just push these off yourself with your finger, but what you got to be careful about with the safety is if you're holding it down like I am now, it will, let me find it, right here, this part on the edges, can actually push that off, and you're going to have a bad time if that happens. It almost happened on my wasser. It was what I was going to say earlier. It was hanging by a thread. I noticed the trigger was feeling kind of spongy and all that. But luckily I noticed that, and I was able to just push it back down. If you notice it slipping, you can pretty easily just push it. But yeah, just be careful of that. So what I'm going to do, it's very hard to see, unfortunately, because once I put this in, it gets too dark in there to show it. But so at this stage here, there's a little kind of lump at the back of the trigger. I need to pull the trigger and then push this down to get past that. But once it reaches that, I want to release the trigger, That way it doesn't start pushing the spring, because then the hammer, or not the hammer, the trigger is kind of upwards, so then it can catch on that. Just got to make sure it's not colliding with it, as you can barely see because it's dark, but it's not hitting it. And then we just got to push that down, and there we go. Now we're in fire. So let's do a function check. So we are in fire. This should go off. Perfect. And let me go back to safe. It's still feeling pretty tight. I'll have to adjust that, but let's just do a function check first. Perfect. So everything's working as I like it, and it's actually not too bad, but it is just a little bit tighter than I would like. So I'm just gonna, actually, before I take this out again, I'm going to put the hammer back up, and then lift the safety up. I won't even take it out all the way, but I'll just bend it a little bit like this. And okay, that actually did, I was thinking that may not even be enough, but that actually did make a little bit of a difference. Still a bit too tight, but I think you get the general idea. So I'm going to finish this up. It's just a lot of tweaking back and forth that I'll have to do. So I'll do this off camera, and I will do that on my wasser as well. And I'll get out to the range and we'll test how it works. So out at the range, I was primarily doing a bunch of ready drills to see how quick I could be with this index finger safety versus a standard safety selector. Unfortunately, I do not have actual data on the difference in speed. However, just as a kind of mental note, I feel like I'm definitely quite a bit quicker here. Alright, so first impressions so far of this Armacon safety. I've gotten it very well adjusted on this SLR. However, it's still just a little bit tighter than I would like. I noticed it's tight kind of in the middle. If I really work at it, I can probably get it to just the right shape. But for now, it's fine. It takes a bit of effort to push it down, but you can see I'm able to still do it with my index finger here, as I am supposed to be able to. So that is good. One thing I don't like about it is the regular tab right here in the front, where you would normally push the safety down with your thumb or whatever up here. This one is, they actually made it smaller on this safety than on the regular safety. Probably about half the length is gone, and I don't really like that. I will probably be using the index finger selector more often than not, but I would prefer if they would have just left this alone. It makes it a little bit annoying because when I do go back onto safe, I do like to just push it up from there, and I'm not in any rush to go back onto safe as much as I am in a rush to go onto fire when I want to go to fire. So I don't mind going up to here to do that, and I would prefer if it was a little bit bigger, but it's not the end of the world, you know. It still works. It's not the biggest issue, but ideally I would like if it was a bit bigger. Now, I was mentioning that this does take a little bit of a deliberate effort to do. However, if I compare that to the, so as I said earlier, I installed this on both this SLR 104 here, as well as my wasser here, and it is the perfect fit on my wasser. And I'm wondering if part of that is because the safety itself is a slightly different design actually on both of these. So if you look at this here, they're very minute differences, but there are slight differences. If you look specifically at the shape here and at the end here, you'll notice the wasser one kind of points outwards here, and it doesn't really have this bar the exact same way on the wasser one. So let me switch to that now. So you can see this is the wasser now. This kind of points out, which is odd, and the overall design is just a little bit different. But this one is really smooth. It's not too loose, and it's just really comfy. So overall, this Armacon selector I would say is really good, but it did take a little bit of fitting, you know. It didn't look too bad probably to all of you, but I cut out a lot of the redundant sort of stuff where I keep going and I'm like, okay, does it fit now? No, let me go back and grind it a bit more. Or in the case of this one, I didn't have to do a whole lot of fitting, but I don't know what I messed up, or almost messed up on the trigger there. As I was mentioning earlier, just watch out so you don't mess up your trigger. It's easy to fix, but ideally you don't want to mess it up in the first place. So it would kind of depend on your specific rifle. This one, the washer is just, it was super easy to put in, and it's just super easy to actuate. Whereas on the SLR, I've been tweaking it for a few hours, just on and off, like, okay, I'll mess around with it a bit more and then I'll take a break. But I just can't get it perfect on the SLR. Whereas on this, I just popped it on and it's immediately perfect. So either way, you know, even though the SLR is a little bit tighter than I would like it to be, I would say it's a very worthwhile investment, because it is still significantly faster, because then I can always just go like that and I don't have to go all the way up here and back up and back down. So overall, I would say that this is a good investment, and I would definitely recommend it. So I hope you all found this interesting. Let me know if you have any other questions about it. I know there are other safeties like the Krebs that are pretty similar, but they have more of a half moon shape. I've never tried the Krebs myself, but I wanted to go with Armacon. There was a lot of reasons, but they are cheaper. That's a big thing as well. And they work quite well. I'm not sure how much fitting you'd have to do on a Krebs, but these Armacon are just a totally standard, or at least they claim that they're a totally standard AK safety shape. Of course, they're not identical, but it was pretty good. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.